My in-laws tried to hijack our honeymoon with a surprise family cruise. We refused and it caused major family drama. As I sat in the cramped living room of my in-laws' house, the weight of what had just been said hung in the air like a storm cloud. My husband, Nat, sat beside me, shifting uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unsure of how to respond. Across from us, his mother and father smiled, completely oblivious to the awkward silence they'd just created. "Well, isn't it the most exciting news?" his mom, Nancy, said, her hands clasped together in front of her chest, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "A surprise family cruise. The whole gang will be there, your aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone." My mind was still processing her words. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just some casual family vacation they were inviting us to. No. They were talking about hijacking our honeymoon. Our honeymoon. We'd spent months planning it, weeks of debating destinations, saving up, and coordinating time off work. Nat and I had finally settled on 2 weeks in Hawaii. The perfect mix of adventure and relaxation. It was going to be our time. Just the two of us. And now, Nancy was sitting across from me, beaming as if she'd just given us the greatest gift in the world, a surprise family cruise that overlapped our honeymoon. I couldn't hide my shock any longer. "Wait," I said slowly. "Are you saying you booked a family cruise for the same time as our honeymoon?" Nancy's smile didn't falter for a second. "Oh, honey, it's perfect. You and Nat will already be off work. And it's such a great opportunity for the family to celebrate together. I mean, how often do we all get to be in the same place at the same time? Plus, cruises are so romantic. You'll get the best of both worlds." I blinked, trying to wrap my head around her reasoning. It was clear that, in her mind, this was the ultimate surprise. A generous offer we couldn't possibly refuse. But what she didn't understand, or maybe didn't care to understand, was that Nat and I didn't want to spend our honeymoon with his extended family. This was supposed to be our time to celebrate the beginning of our marriage, not an obligatory family reunion. Nat, bless his heart, was frozen beside me, his eyes darting between his mother and me, clearly trying to find a way to smooth things over. He was the peacekeeper. Always had been. I could tell he didn't want to hurt his mom's feelings. But I also knew he didn't want to spend our honeymoon on a crowded boat with relatives. I took a deep breath and forced a polite smile. "Nancy, that's thoughtful. But we've already planned our honeymoon. We were really looking forward to Hawaii. Just the two of us." Nancy's face fell for a split second before she regained her composure. "Oh, I know. But plans can change. This cruise is such a great deal. And it'll be so much fun with everyone there. You two can still have your romantic moments. But you'll also get to be with family. Isn't that what's most important?" I felt my chest tighten. Was she seriously trying to guilt trip us into this? I glanced at Nat, silently willing him to say something, to stand up for us. But he just sat there, looking torn. "Nancy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we appreciate the offer. Really. But this is our honeymoon. We want it to be just us. We've been planning it for months. And you can plan a trip to Hawaii anytime," she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "This cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your cousins from California are flying in just for this. Don't you want to spend time with them?" I bit the inside of my cheek, struggling to maintain my composure. This was supposed to be our decision, not hers. Why couldn't she see that? Before I could respond, Nat finally spoke up. "Mom, we already have everything booked for Hawaii. We can't just cancel everything." Nancy's smile faltered again, and her voice took on a slightly sharper edge. "Nat, I've already put down a deposit for the cruise. We're all so excited about this. Your father and I have been looking forward to it for months. Don't you think it would be nice to celebrate as a family?" Matt hesitated, And I could see the guilt creeping in. Nancy was good at this, manipulating situations to make it seem like we were the unreasonable ones. I had seen it before in smaller ways. But this was on a whole new level. I'm sure it'll be a great time, Nat said cautiously. But this is our honeymoon. We really want to do it our way. There. He'd said it. And for a moment, I thought that maybe Nancy would understand. That she'd realize she was overstepping. But instead, she leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly. You know, she said, her voice low. Family is the most important thing. I raised you to value that. Nat. I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to share this special time with the people who love you the most. I could feel my patience wearing thin. This wasn't about love or family. This was about control. Nancy couldn't stand the thought of us doing something without her involvement. Without her being at the center of it. And now she was trying to guilt-trip Nat into going along with it. I stood up abruptly, unable to sit through another minute of this conversation. Thank you for the offer, Nancy. But the answer is no. We're going to Hawaii. End of discussion. Nancy's mouth dropped open, clearly shocked by my bluntness. Nat quickly stood up beside me, glancing nervously between his mother and me. We'll talk about this later, he mumbled, grabbing my hand. We should probably get going. Before Nancy could protest, we made our way out the door, the tension between us thickening with every step. As soon as we got in the car, Nat let out a long sigh, rubbing his temples. I'm sorry, he muttered. I didn't expect her to pull this. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. She's always like this, Nat. You know that. She doesn't respect boundaries. And if we don't start setting some now, she's going to keep trying to control our lives. I know, he said, looking genuinely defeated. But it's hard. You know. She always makes me feel guilty. Like I'm doing something wrong. I reached over and took his hand. You're not doing anything wrong. This is our life. Our marriage. We get to make our own decisions. She doesn't get to hijack our honeymoon. No matter how much she tries to guilt us. Nat nodded, squeezing my hand. You're right. We'll go to Hawaii. Just the two of us. A few days later, we were packing for Hawaii when Nancy called. I could hear her voice faintly through the speaker as Nat held the phone to his ear. The conversation started innocently enough, with her asking about last-minute preparations for the trip. But I knew better than to believe it would stay that way. Then came the inevitable question. Have you reconsidered the cruise? Nat shot me a quick glance, his brow furrowing. No. Mom. We haven't. We're going to Hawaii. I couldn't hear her response, but I could tell from Nat's expression that it wasn't pleasant. He rubbed the back of his neck, shifting uncomfortably. I know you're upset. But this is our decision. It's what we want. More muffled talking. Then a pause. I know, Nat said, his voice quieter now, as if he were trying to soothe her. We'll spend time with the family soon. I promise. But not for the honeymoon. I sat on the bed, folding a few shirts into our suitcase, my hands moving mechanically as I listened. I couldn't hear every word, but I could tell from Nat's increasingly weary tone that his mother was laying it on thick. I kept my focus on packing, trying not to let it get to me. This was our trip. Nothing was going to change that. After a few more minutes of back and forth, Nat finally ended the call, dropping the phone onto the bed with a heavy sigh. Well? I asked, folding one last shirt and turning to him. She's mad, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. She said we're being selfish and that the family will be disappointed. I raised an eyebrow. The family? Or her? He shrugged, sitting down beside me. Both. I guess. I placed a hand on his knee, squeezing gently. Nat, this is our honeymoon. We're allowed to be selfish. We deserve this time to ourselves. I know, he said quietly, staring down at his hands. It's just hard. She makes me feel like I'm letting everyone down. You're not. I assured him. You're setting boundaries. And that's important. If we don't start now, it's only going to get worse. He nodded. But I could tell the guilt was still gnawing at him. Nancy had a way of doing that, making you feel like you were the one being unreasonable, even when she was the one overstepping. The morning we left for Hawaii was a mix of excitement and relief. Nat had been quiet the past few days, clearly weighed down by his mother's disappointment. But I was determined not to let it ruin our trip. We'd made our decision. And now it was time to enjoy the vacation we'd been dreaming about for months. As we boarded the plane, I could feel the tension melting away. This was it. Our honeymoon. Just the two of us. No distractions. No family drama. We were finally free. Or so I thought. 2 days into our trip, I woke up to find Nat sitting on the balcony of our hotel room, his phone pressed to his ear. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I knew immediately who he was talking to. I sighed, throwing the covers off and heading outside to join him. He glanced up as I approached, looking both apologetic and exasperated. "It's Mom," he mouthed, holding the phone slightly away from his ear as she continued talking. I crossed my arms, leaning against the balcony railing. "Seriously?" He nodded, covering the mouthpiece with his hand. "She's upset about the cruise." "Still?" I said, incredulous. "It's been 2 days. Why is she calling now?" Nat sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Apparently, they're about to leave for the cruise. And she's just upset that we're not there. She keeps saying it doesn't feel right without us." I rubbed my temples, trying to keep my frustration in check. We were on our honeymoon. For God's sake, couldn't she give us a break? "Tell her we'll catch up when we get back," I muttered, heading back inside. "I'm going to get ready for breakfast." When Nat finally joined me downstairs at the breakfast buffet, he looked drained. I told her we'd call when we got back. "But she's still upset." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean she's upset because we didn't drop everything and change our plans to accommodate her?" He sighed. "Yeah. Pretty much." I shook my head, my frustration boiling over. "Nat, this is ridiculous. We're on our honeymoon. This is supposed to be about us, not her." "I know," he said quickly, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to let her ruin this. I promise." I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Good. Because we deserve this. We worked hard to plan this trip. And I'm not going to let her guilt trip us into feeling bad for enjoying ourselves." Nat nodded, reaching across the table to take my hand. "You're right. We're here for us, not for her." For the rest of the trip, we managed to avoid any more phone calls from Nancy. I made sure we stayed busy hiking, snorkeling, exploring the island, anything to keep our minds off the family drama waiting for us back home. When we finally returned, sun-kissed and relaxed, I felt ready to face whatever fallout was waiting for us. We had set our boundaries, and we had stuck to them. That was something to be proud of. But as soon as we walked through the front door of our apartment, the phone rang. Matt picked it up, his face falling as soon as he heard his mother's voice on the other end. I watched him for a moment, waiting to see how he would handle it. And then, finally, I heard him say the words I'd been hoping for. "Mom, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We made our decision. And it's done. We had a great time on our honeymoon. Just the two of us. And that's how it was supposed to be." A pause. "I'm sorry you're upset. But this isn't up for discussion." I smiled to myself, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, we had finally turned a corner. Nat hung up the phone and turned to me, looking both exhausted and relieved. Well, that's that. I walked over and wrapped my arms around him, resting my head on his chest. I'm proud of you. He smiled, kissing the top of my head. Thanks. I think we'll need a vacation from the vacation now. I laughed. Maybe. But at least we survived. We had. Indeed. Survived, and more importantly, we had set the boundaries that were going to protect our marriage from here on out. And as far as I was concerned, that was worth more than any cruise ever could be.